Hey, how's it going?
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing well. Yeah, I just wanted to check you so I had time to do that technical phone screen for the next hour. Is it?
Sure.
Okay, cool. I can tell you a bit about background, and then we can do some coding, and then at the end, if you have any questions, you can ask me whatever. I don't know if you know, I'm from Lyft. I'm not sure if they tell you what the company is or not, but yeah. So I will tell you a bit about me. So I've been at Lyft for about. I work mostly on the back end, in Python, PHP. I worked on which is like Flask, and kind of like a whole flow from when you we run a whole lot of things, like make you watch some training videos, and then put you through like a mentoring session with like an experienced driver, and they fill out like a checklist and stuff. So kind of like wrote that flow, and I've been in the few months, so where like drivers get attacked via social engineering and stuff. So
both in the back end and the front end as well.
Mostly back end. I've done a little bit of front end, but I only know a little bit. So yeah, mostly back end.
Sure.
So yeah. I was going to ask like what language you're kind of comfortable coding in.
For me, my language that I'm familiar with is JavaScript. I can use
Okay,
Java
cool.
if I have to as well.
I think I have. I'm just trying to find I had like a template for this question in JavaScript somewhere. What was the other language you said? Sorry.
JavaScript. Sometimes I may use Java, but my first preference is JavaScript.
Okay. Give me a second. I just need to find. I had like a code template for this question. All right, I found it. So let's go JavaScript. You can see the code window and stuff?
Yes, I can see it.
Okay, cool. So let's see if that runs. Sweet. So basically the problem is around drivers taking breaks and enforcing that they take breaks so they don't drive for too long. Because like if they drive for like 18 hours at a time, they get tired, and it's like not good for anyone really. It's like unsafe. It's like not good for the passenger either. So we put this sort of rule into the system that enforces that they take a break. So basically, like the function I want you to write will take a driver's history of shift times, so start and end times, and then the current time, and the times are like integer hours since Lyft launched. So it's kind of just like a sort of a version of a timestamp, whereas like 0 is where Lyft launched. And so basically like the rule we came up with is that if you drive 12 or more hours, you need to take an 8-hour break before you're allowed to drive again. So like this rule would be used when a driver tries to enter driver mode on the app, and then like we would say, sorry, you need to take an 8-hour break before you're allowed to drive again. And also like for kicking them out of driver mode if they've driven 12 hours.
So why is this?
Sorry.
On line 20, why is this supposed to return true?
So basically it returns true because the driver is allowed to drive. They haven't driven basically so since their last 8-hour break, they haven't driven 12 or more hours. So it returns true. It would return false if they've driven, like 12 or more hours without an 8-hour break. So since their last 8-hour break. So yeah, they're kind of like 3 different examples. So I'll put it like down here so it kind of makes more sense. Yeah, so like basically like the first example, this driver's driven like 2 shifts ever. The first being from 2 to 6, which is like a 4-hour shift, and then they took an 8-hour break between 6 and 14, and then 14 to 24 they took a 10-hour shift. So since their last 8-hour break, they've driven 10 hours, and so they're okay to drive. They'll be allowed to drive for another 2 more hours before they would have to take a break.
And the next one is false because so the driver took 6-hour break. He worked for 6 hours from 2 to 8, and then he took a 4-hour break, and then from 12 to 16 that is 4. So 6 plus 4, 10, and then he took a 4-hour break, and then 2 hours. So 10 plus 2 is 12.
Yeah.
I see.
Yeah, you got it.
And the next guy, 0 to 4 is 4 hours, and then he took a 2-hour break. And then 6 to 10 is 4, so that's 8 in total. And then 8 plus 4 is 12. So yeah, he did do 12. I see. Okay, am I guaranteed that the timestamps here are in increasing order? So for instance, I see that.
Yeah. Yep.
I see.
So yeah, they're sorted. So the first one's always going to be the earliest shift ever, like the first shift they ever took, and then yeah, the last one's the most recent shift they took.
I see. What would happen in the case that the driver, worked for like 12 hours straight? Say from 2 to 24. Let's say he worked from 2 to let's say 16, right? So like his only input was something like 2 to 16, like that. Would this return true?
Yeah. Well, what would the current time be in that case?
So if you don't mind, I'll modify this. So 2 to 15. That would return true, right? Because that would be a 12-hour or 13 hours of work that he did.
So 13 hours, and then let's see. So since between 15 and 24, there's like 9 hours of break. So like at the current time, 24. Yeah, they've already had an 8-hour break, so they're good to drive, even though they violated the rule in the past. Like, the rule applies at the current time, it may have not applied in the past.
Okay. But it says return true if the driver has driven less than 12 hours since their last 8-hour break. But he has driven more than 12 hours, and then there's been a break. So should this return false then?
So with your example, they drove a 13-hour shift, and then between the end of that shift and the current time is 9-hour break. So can they drive right now? Yeah, they can, because they haven't driven for 9 hours. They've already taken an 8-hour break.
I see. So I return true.
Yeah.
See. Okay. All right. Let me just take a couple of notes here. Our break, and then 8-hour break, and then he does 10. Okay, so this guy is true if the driver has driven less than 12 hours. since their last data. Okay, I see. Okay. And this guy is 6. Or that's fine. Okay. And there's 4. So he's taken a 4-hour break, and then this guy has then done 2. Okay. So he has not had an 8-hour break. Is that why we're totaling these guys up? 6 plus 4 plus 2?
So let's see. So you mean with the third test case?
Sorry, with the second case, I guess I'm trying to understand why it's false, because he's never had an 8-hour break, which is why we're totaling his entire.
Yes. So they've hit 12 hours. Like they've hit 12 hours of driving, and they've never taken an 8-hour break.
I see.
So like if the current time here was 30, it would return true.
I see. So if it was,
because there would be an 8-hour break. It's kind of like, how much time did you accumulate since your last 8-hour break?
I see. So okay, and if this was 30, then it would have been true. I see. Let me just see if I could. This was 30. This would have been true because this was 8. I see. Okay, so I guess what I'm thinking of is, I'm thinking of so totaling the number of hours that this guy has worked for each interval, right? So from 2 to 6, you have 4. But then if you do see an 8-hour break, and then you total the rest, so I guess 14 plus 24, that's 10. You've reached the end.
Yeah.
You've reached the end, and whatever you've driven, if it's less than 12, then you return true.
Okay.
But in the case where the difference between the time intervals, when it is not greater than, if the breaks are less than 8, then you can total the distance, right? So 6, 4, and then this actually, instead of 4, it should be 6 plus 4, which is 10. And since there's another break, a 4-hour break, then this will be 12, right? And we can change this guy back to what it was 24, wasn't it? So 24.
Yeah.
Okay, so we see that there is no 8. So the underscore basically is the distance, or the breaks that this guy has taken. And we see that none of these breaks are above 8. So in that case, you'll just return false. So the only time this could ever be true is if this guy has taken an 8-hour break and he's driven more than 12 hours, or he's worked for more than 12 hours. So for instance, this would be 4, and the break that he takes is 2 hours. So then 6, 10 is 4. 4 plus 4 is 8, so he's worked for 8 hours. 10, 11, 12, so he's taken a 2-hour break. And then 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, so 4, so that's 12, right? But since he's never taken, he has not taken an 8-hour break, has he? Oh wait, he does, because 16 and 24, so that's 8.
Yeah.
I see. So then he has taken an 8-hour break, and one of his values, or his total distance, total whatever he's worked at is, okay, so I think I kind of understand it now.
Yeah, yeah, I think you get it.
All right, so let's see, maybe I could have something here called, var, let's call this, let's see what I would need here. So 4, and then you would have 8, 10, 0. Okay, so, I mean, let's see. 6, -4, 10, it is 8. Okay, all right, so let's do, hours equals 0. Bar break. Okay, so now what you want to do is you want to, for var I equals 0, I is less than the history, length, I plus plus. So what you want to do right now is get the work interval. This is the history, I. Okay, so now what you can do is do var work hours equals interval 1 minus work interval of 0. Okay, so now you have the work hours with you. Okay, so now you have that. You have your work hours. Plus equals. Okay. Okay, so now what we want to do is we take a look at the break hours, right? So our last work. I guess last worked equals interval of 1. So let's say last work equals maybe it's easier to do it this way actually. Work hours equals, maybe better to initialize it already like this. History 0. 1 minus history 0 of 0. Okay, so that's your work hours. Don't have your break hours yet. And your last work was history 0 of. Okay, so instead of going here, let's do it like this. Work interval. Okay, so work hours. If work interval of I, if work interval of 0 is minus last work is greater than or equal to 8, then what should you do? Less than 12 hours. Change there. Okay. Hours equals 0. Okay, so now work hours equals 0. Else, you can just do this. clock interval minus work interval 0 plus the work hours. Yep. Okay, so then last work is equal to last work interval. Yes, that's fine. Okay, next, although what we want to do is we could do something like this. So work interval is history I, okay, so in this case this would be work hours is going to be 2 minus 6, yes, okay, or 6 minus 2, which is 4, okay, and then break hour 0, last worked was 0, 1, yeah, that's 6, okay, so now work interval is going to be the history of I, which starts from 1, then work interval 0 minus last worked, 0 minus last worked, it is less than, work goes back to 0, okay, else, yeah, okay, that's great. Okay, so now what we want to do here is we want to check the if time minus last worked is greater than or equal to 8, then okay, if it is less than or equal to 8, then work, what is it, work hours equals 0, else, okay, if this is that, right? And if work hours is greater than equal to 12, return true. Okay. False, true, false. Okay, so actually, might be returning the wrong thing here. Returns true if the driver has less, oh, okay, sorry. So this should be false, and this should be true.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Sweet. Should be good. Cool. Yeah. Yeah, that's generally the right solution. So, what I was wondering is, like, you know, if you had something like a bigger set of shifts, what you would do, let's see. Oh, sorry. Something, oh, I got it wrong, sorry. That's just kind of like probably a bit slow. So like, let's do like that more actually to demonstrate. Yeah. It's still pretty fast, but like, yeah, I guess the point is like, what if you had like, how could you make it more efficient with like a larger data set?
I see. Okay, so maybe what we could try to do is how to make this more efficient, right? So returns true if the driver has driven less than 12 hours since their last 8-hour break. I guess we could maybe we could find our last 8-hour break, right? So we don't have to go through every single breaks that we've taken. I'm trying to think of what we could do with that knowledge, right? If we just find our last 8-hour, let's see. Yeah, so I think we could just find our last 8-hour break and then find out how much he's worked after that. And once we, then we just have to look at the number of hours. Okay, so our last 8-hour break would be, well, starting from our current time, we can go backwards. So if we use history 3 as our example, right? So our current time is 24, and we go back, and his last working hour was 16. So he's already taken an 8-hour break. And in that case, he has, you just, since he's worked less than 12 hours, or he hasn't worked at all since his last 8-hour break, you just return false. Or sorry, you return true. And in the case of history 2, you start at 24, you go back to 22, okay, and you go from 20 to 16, which is 4, and you go from 12 to 8, which is 4. So he has not taken any 8-hour break, right? And as you're going, I guess you could calculate the distance going back.
Yeah.
Going back.
Yeah.
So I guess the idea is to go backwards. I think I went forwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, the idea could be
right.
to go backwards, and you could just break off. You could break immediately once you get your answer.
Yeah, that's right.
Should I?
Yeah, do you want to see if you can sort of quickly adapt to, that's generally what I was looking for. So yeah, just see if you can go backward, do something similar.
Sure.
Like comment it out or whatever, and then.
Yeah, okay. So let me see if I could, comment this guy out. I think it's slash. Yeah, okay. Okay, so let's see what I could do here. I might need most of what I had. Maybe I can copy it and see if I can modify it from there.
Yeah.
Okay. So now our break hours would be from the current time minus the history of dot length of 1. Or history dot length minus 1. And the work hours should be, that's fine, let's keep it at 0 for now. And last worked was, also keep that as 0 for now. For var I equals dot length minus 1, history is greater than -1, I minus minus. We could do something like if break hours is greater than or equal to 8, then return, I believe it's return true, right?
Yeah.
Do that here. And then the work interval is going to be history of I, or work interval is actually going to be, okay, yeah, that's right. 0 minus I, that's fine. Well, actually, this should be work interval is 0. I could actually do that right here. Let's get rid of these guys. So work interval is the history I, okay, and now we want the work hours equals interval of 1 minus work interval of 0. Okay, so we put that in the work hours. And now, so this becomes 10. If it is greater than 8, well, it actually shouldn't matter, right? As long as you take an 8, if it is an 8-hour break, mm, 10. Wait, I feel like I'm getting confused a little bit here. So let me just keep it up.
I think like as soon as you see an 8-hour break, you can sort of like return true. So it's that one case.
Mm-hmm.
So I think like, generally like iterating backward, and then you see an 8-hour break and you're like, okay, I don't need to like look at anything else. But assuming like they haven't accumulated 12 hours up until that point.
Uh-huh. So when I do go backwards, I accumulate the work hours. I accumulate the work hours. If, but I should also look at the, so I've accumulated the work hours here. Then I should also get the break, right? Or does that even matter?
Yeah, like you want to look at like the current break based on where you are in the loop.
If work hours is greater than 12 or greater than or equal to 12, and last break, or the break hours, right? Okay, wait. So here, this is 10. Or 0, okay, so then 10 is my work hours. But then there's 8, right? So, okay, so that's fine. Let me just do it like this. If R equals, R hours equals the work interval of 1 minus of 0, sorry, 0. If break hours is greater than or equal to 8, and work hours equally or greater than or equal to 12. Return true, right? Well, if break hours is greater.
So I think pretty much like you can just only consider the break hour and the return true, and then you can have like another if case for the work hours.
Oh, so like that, just break out.
No, I mean, like, all you need to do in this if statement is, like, look at the break hours, like, don't worry about the work hours, and then, like, have a separate if statement for the work hours.
I see. So something like that. If it's just equal to greater than or equal to 8, return true. And then a separate statement for break hours, like, or for work hours, right?
Yeah.
This is what you had meant?
Yeah, pretty much.
So work hours is greater than or equal to 12. And in this case, I return false, right?
Yeah.
But shouldn't this be and work hours is less than 12?
I mean, like, what if in the previous iteration you saw that it was greater than or equal to 12 and you return false, and so, like, the next time around you already know from the last iteration that it wasn't 12 or more?
I see. That makes sense. So I wouldn't need this.
Yeah, so, like, yeah, you shouldn't need to check that, like, because it should have already been caught in the previous iteration.
See. So here,
and then I think, like, I think it might just be, like, shifting around where you're calculating the work and break hours in the current iteration.
Yeah.
Like, think about, like, where you're at with each iteration, and you're like, oh, okay, I'm checking the current work hours, and then I'm checking the break before that, and then, you know, the next iteration you do the same thing.
Right. Okay, so let's see. In our current iteration, if break hours is greater than 8, let's see, if the break hours is greater than or equal to 8, I still think we should, let's just pretend this is our base condition, right?
Okay.
And the work return true.
Okay.
So over here, we have work interval as our current history, I. We're calculating our current work hours, which is this much. Yeah, okay. Else, we'll set our work hours back to 0. Work interval is history I. Work hours is work interval I minus work interval 0. Okay. That's great. That's fine. Let's see what else then. 0. Okay. Then our break hours is going to be the break after, but this might actually be a problem because I minus 1 could be, it could go out of bounds, right? So we should do something like if I is greater than 0, then do this. Okay, but yeah, if I is greater than 0, then do this. Else break hours equals work interval of 0. Should be fine. All right, I think this might do.
Yeah, let's run it and see.
Never mind. So this guy should return false. It's not returning. All right, so 24 minus 2. Okay, let's see why. Break hours have to be greater than 8. Right, so
you're never returning false.
That's right. Okay, that's right. So this should be false. Okay, so the first guy is returning false. Let's see why. So 8. So our break hours is greater than or equal to 8. Let's see what our work hours is. Oh, it could be that our plus or equals. I don't know if that's correct. Right, let's just go with that. No. Let's look at what our work hours is here.
So I think you can append the work hours. I think you just want to think about each iteration and what you're doing. Like, you're sort of keeping track of the work hours as you go backward, and then you first want to check the current sort of like break time. Like, what do you do first? Do you check like that you hit 12 or more hours, or do you check the break time? Like, it kind of depends on what order you have things within the loop.
I see. So perhaps we should check the break hours and the work hours after.
Yeah, I think that would be a little clearer to do it that way. Yeah.
Got it. Okay. I see. So let's try running this right now.
I'm not sure about setting work hours to 0 though. That's the one thing I wasn't sure about.
Oh, you mean at line 44?
Like 54, I think. Yeah.
Line 54? Oh, you mean setting it back to 0? Okay.
Yeah.
I see. So the reason I guess it wouldn't really make any sense to do that. But I guess what I was thinking of was, so here it's 10, and then you have, so work hours is now 10, and then you're calculating your break hours, which is going to be 8. I see. So then this should be fine. That should be fine. Okay, it's still false. Why is that? So break hours is greater than 0. Break hours is work interval is 0. Oh, sorry, this is equal to, not minus. Okay, there we go. All right, there we go.
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, it's interesting. Like, so one other thing I saw that popped up was that you return false at the end. So I'm wondering about, like, you know, if I was like a product manager and I was like, what happens like if they only have driven like one shift ever, and it's like something like that, and then equals like so like 6 or something. Like, what do you think that should do? If we were to run it.
Can drive history 4. I think history 4 has been defined twice, right? So you might want to call this history 5.
Sorry. Yeah, you're right. Yep. Yeah. So yeah, like what do you think without running that? Like, what do you think it should return?
All right. So time 5 is 6. So he's only taken a 2-hour break. I guess this should return false. Am I right? I think
so basically, this driver has driven like 2 hours, and they've taken a 2-hour break, but they're not allowed to drive, is what you're saying.
I see.
So if you sort of think back to why we're implementing the rule, and then like what makes sense in this case?
Yeah, in this case, he should be able to drive because, you know, yeah, you are right. He's only taken a 2-hour break, and he's only driven for 2 hours. He should be able to drive again, but I think our code over here will I'm sure our code over here is going to return false.
Yeah.
Okay. So perhaps to take care of this, we could have like a limiter, right? So maybe let's say if he's driven less than 12 hours, then if he's only driven for less than 12 hours and he's had less than an 8-hour break in total, then he should still be able to continue. Does that kind of make sense? So
yeah, so like what would like work hours be at this point? Like at this point?
Work hours should be 2.
So yeah, and then like, okay, you've looked at all of the history, and then work hours is 2. So
if you could do something so like
based on the.
If work hours is less than 12 hours, then return true, else false.
Yeah. Yeah, sure. Yeah.
Should I read
that works.
All right.
Yeah, no, that's fine. I just wanted to check that you sort of could see it like, from like a product perspective as well as like a engineering type. But yeah, that's basically it. So yeah, it's just like going backward and then returning what else? So like the other thing you're right. So basically like the other thing you could have done was if you return false within the loop as well, as soon as you saw like 12 or more hours, because you don't need to keep iterating, but it's generally right anyway, so.
That makes sense too.
Cool.
I agree.
Yeah. Yeah, that's basically the question. So, yeah, thanks for your time. Do you have any like questions? I can tell you anything about Lyft or whatever you want to know.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, Lyft sounds like a great company. I've done some research on it, and I guess obviously you're probably sick and tired of the Uber question that you might get from that interview. I guess maybe I could try asking that, right? Like, how do you as an engineer feel about Uber? And also maybe from a product perspective, how do they stack up against Lyft?
So I think my point of view on it is that, we're the underdog, so I like to think we'd sort of, be quite thoughtful about the decisions around the product, and, we don't we sort of try to keep our focus on the right experience. And I think maybe they've sort of, spread themselves out, and they've got like food delivery and lots of things like that, and they're also international. So I think like in terms of our product, we've sort of kept focus on a good ride experience, and yeah, we're a little smaller, so I think like I have no idea what it's like to work there, obviously, but like that we can sort of like move faster as a company around the one product that we have. I think also during my time here, like it's the first time I've worked for a company that has like quite a lot of competition with another company sort of head to head, and I think that it's actually like a really good thing for both of us. Is if it was just them and they didn't have competition, they wouldn't be like pushing themselves to create a better product. I think like having that strong competition, builds better. We both build better products because of it, and so it's ultimately overall good for the industry. So yeah, like I find that like there's some parts of the work where it might be like playing a little bit of catch up, or maybe they implement something that we implemented or whatever. But yeah, I think other than that, we're kind of like doing our own thing. We have different like focuses. So I do like the fact that we're focused on like a smaller thing. We're trying to do one thing and do it right. So yeah, that's kind of my view on it.
Cool.
Next, good question there. Yeah. Oh, anything else?
Yeah, nothing else. I like the interview. Thank you for the time. Yeah.
Yeah, no worries. Yeah, I have good feedback. So, I'll write my feedback, and then, if you're interested, then I think our recruiters should get back to you and see if you're interested in like an on-site interview or whatever. But yeah, again, thanks for your time. Cool, and have a good week.
You too. Thank you.